EdTech holds a lot of promise, but in rural and under-resourced schools, the reality is quite complex. At South African EdTech Week, we gathered insights from across the ecosystem, and we've synthesized these insights into a new innovation consideration framework. Let's chat with Nonku Nyati, Senior Partnerships and Ecosystem Lead at Injini, to unpack the framework a bit. Can you please tell us what the core message of the framework is?
Yeah, thanks so much, So as you mentioned, we had a really successful EdTech Week last year, and there's a lot that I can share about it, but I think a real highlight that came out of that is that we were able to bring the ecosystem together and really do some collective thinking on what are some areas or what are some of the key areas that we need to consider when we are innovating in this ecosystem. And so through some of the conversations that we had in our breakout sessions, we were able to sort of organize this information into 5 distinct domains or areas that we need to critically be thinking about when we are innovating or doing any kind of initiatives in our sector. Those domains include learner diversity, teacher support, infrastructure, ecosystem coordination, and implementation.
That sounds like it would be a lot for EdTech builders and implementers to manage. So how would they navigate this?
Yeah, so it really is a lot for EdTech implementers and innovators to think about and to consider. But I think what's also really helpful and what came out of these conversations is 7 core principles that underpin these domains. And what these principles are and what came out of the conversations that led to the principles is that, when we are considering teacher support and learner diversity, there are certain conditions that need to be true. An example of that is designing for the teacher reality. So what we mean by that is that if you're not considering the lived reality and the day-to-day rhythm of a teacher's experience, then your tool's not likely to be successful in that environment.
And what about the practical side, like the lack of internet connection?
So this is addressed by our 3rd principle, our 3rd enabling condition: build for low-tech, offline, and high fragility conditions. And so when we say this, what we mean is that if you are at all considering innovating for a low-resourced environment, it's really important to consider accessibility as a key factor. If your solution cannot be accessed offline or in conditions where there is no electricity or Wi-Fi, for example, then once again, it's probably not fit and will not succeed and be effective in that environment.
Okay, so from what you're saying, Nonku, it sounds as if this framework is just as much about people as it is about technology. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I would argue that the technology wouldn't really work without the people. And this was echoed by our community, who emphasized the importance of co-creation and community ownership, which we've included as our principles. So what this means is that when we treat schools and learning environments like the high potential ecosystems that they are, and not just endpoints for a product, we can really make adoption meaningful and sustainable for this ecosystem and beyond.
The framework shows that when these needs are met, learning becomes more joyful and teaching becomes more efficient. So just as a quick recap, Nonku, would you mind listing all 7 principles that emerged as foundational to effective EdTech adoption in under-resourced contexts?
Sure. These are: design for teacher realities first, honor linguistic and learning diversity, build for low-tech, offline, high-fragility conditions, co-create with teachers, learners, and communities, treat schools as ecosystems, not endpoints, integrate implementation into daily school operations, and enable community ownership and asset protection.
Thank you so much, Nonku. Download the Innovation Consideration Framework below to see how you can apply these principles to your work.